from the Mercy One studio.
Support for Faith on Trial and Iowa Catholic Radio provided in part by Imogene Ingredients.
Our freedom of conscience and religion is being challenged by laws and regulations imposed by secular society. It's time to hear from the top Christian litigators in the nation who have come forward to tell us the truth and help us defend our faith.
Hear ye, hear ye. All rise. Faith on Trial with Defender of the Faith, Deacon Mike Mano, is in session.
And good Thursday morning from the Mercy One Studios in West Des Moines. This is Deacon Mike Mano, and I'm here with Gina No. How are you this morning, Gina?
I'm well, yes.
I understand we're staying up late last night tutoring.
Yes, one of my children has had two finals today, so we worked through some of the studies guides last night. Up a little late, but I think she's prepared.
Actually, it was probably better than watching the news last night. I've turned off a lot of that stuff, and I've been watching reruns of Hogan's Heroes and Bar Rescue and that. It's more calming to your nerves.
I would imagine. I haven't seen the news in forever, actually.
It's bad, I'll tell you.
Read it, right, and then I can skip over the stuff I don't really enjoy hearing about. So. But I did hear we're getting a big storm, so it's kind of gloomy here today.
Okay.
And we have to prepare
Well,
ourselves.
That's good we're on in the morning. Then we get
right.
home and get into our house before anything hits us. I'll have to go out and make sure my snowblower
So maybe
is
I'll
ready to
catch
go.
up on some of that news tomorrow when we're home all day.
It'll still be there, unfortunately. But we do have some current events that we do want to talk about here today. We're going to have Douglas Blair from the Heritage Foundation. He's going to talk about how leftists are targeting our children, especially even using cartoons. And then we're going to talk to Robert Marshall, who is a writer, a former member of the Virginia state legislature, former congressional aide, had something interesting story. I don't know if we'll get to it, about how he was involved in the adoption of the Hyde Amendment when he was working on Capitol Hill. And he's going to talk to us about something called the Equality Act, which sounds like it's very good, but really there's a lot of traps in there for us. So he's going to point some of those out for us.
I think he'll do a good job of helping us understand what Virginia did in the last few months, passing the Values Act, will affect all of us in the long run. And I imagine he'll give us good information about how we can, as Catholics and Christians, affect legislation and those in the position of making those legislations, our congressmen and senators. I
hope so. He's an interesting fellow. I tracked him down the beginning of the week and finally got a hold of him. I found got a friend at another site that had he was writing for, and I got a phone number and called him, and we must have talked for 45 minutes. I mean, he's an interesting guy. The things that he was able to tell, we'd never get it all down in one segment, so he may be somebody we want to call back.
Yes, I'm looking forward to having that discussion with him. We've talked about the Hyde Amendment a number of times on the show and the Equality Act, but this is really something that we'll be lucky to be able to dig in deeper, and somebody from behind the scenes.
Good. Do you have a prayer to open us up with, Gina?
I do. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. God of peace, bring your peace to our violent world, peace in the hearts of all men and women, and peace among the nations of the earth. Turn to your way of love those whose hearts and minds are consumed with hatred, strengthen us in hope, and give us the wisdom and courage to work tirelessly for a world where true peace and love reign among nations and in the hearts of all. Amen.
Very good. Thank you. You're listening to Faith on Trial on Iowa Catholic Radio, and we will be right back after these messages.
Thank you, Blessment International, for their support of Iowa Catholic Radio. Everyone lives their life 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. How we use that time directly affects if our life will leave a significant impact or not. Each year, Blessment International leads Central Iowans on a 12-day, all-inclusive experience sharing the heart of Christ with children in South Africa. Teams are forming to do something significant in an African child's life. Learn more at blessmentinternational.org. That's blessmentinternational.org.
Is it time for a new roof? Then it could be time for you to get to know Bell Construction. Bell Construction is a roofing company entering its 30th year of business. They specialize in residential re-roofs, light commercial jobs, and have the experience to meet all of your roofing needs with personal service. With Bell Construction, the owner will come to your home or place of business in person to inspect and ensure the quality of work that you deserve. They pride themselves in working with you on a personal basis and making sure you are satisfied. Bell Construction, 515-963-4494.
Thank you, Big Red Q Quick Print, for underwriting the sports report. Family owned and operated since 1980, Big Red Q Quick Print is a full-service print shop ready to help you with all your printing needs with speed and accuracy. Forms, manuals, brochures, letterhead, envelopes, business cards, custom invitations, design, and bindery. Big Red Q Quick Print, located across from Merle Hay Mall. Online at bigredq-desmoines.com. Big Red Q Quick Print. We make printing easy.
What is the best gift ever? Giving a Catholic education is at the top of my list. Your contribution to CTO helps families send their children to our Catholic schools who otherwise could not afford it. In giving to CTO, you receive the best tax credits ever. Pledge or donate online at ctoiowa.org. The bottom line, it's for the kids and their future.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and Catholic Women Now provided in part by Permar Security, providing security solutions for homes and businesses since 1953. Permar Security is a Catholic-owned family business supplying security systems, access control systems, video surveillance, fire alarm systems, and video doorbells. All alarm systems are monitored out of their monitoring center located in the state of Iowa. Permar Security, 515-244-5660, permarsecurity.com.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and Faith on Trial provided by Paul Martin and Paul Mitchell, owners of Imogene Ingredients. Imogene Ingredients supply specialized feed ingredients for livestock and pet diets to improve maternal and young animal health in both conventional and organic production. And you're listening to Faith on Trial on Iowa Catholic Radio, and we're having some technical difficulties right now getting our guests up, but we will get them here forthwith. So, Gina, we have a little bit more time to talk about your tutoring last night with your...
What do you want to know about chemistry and algebra trig?
Nothing that I could...
No, but let me point out that today's guest that will eventually get on the show brings a very important point to our listeners about how, as parents, we have to be very vigilant about the kind of programming our children are exposed to. Just because it's a cartoon doesn't necessarily mean that it's appropriate.
Yeah, well, and that's where we're having some trouble with the cartoon guy.
That
so
we'll
get him back next week,
right?
And go from there,
right? And
it looks like, though, we do have Robert Marshall with us. Bob, are you there?
If I said no, would you believe me?
No. Yeah. Yes, today we would, actually.
Yeah, it's one of those days.
Okay.
We and thank you for coming in early, and we'll have a little bit longer time with you here. And but anyway, you to bring our listeners up to date, you were 26 years in the Virginia legislature. You served as a congressional assistant. You had some role to play, I understand, in the formulation of the Hyde Amendment.
That's correct.
And you've been writing for a number of various Catholic publications. The last thing I think I saw was from Legatus that you got published.
Yes, correct.
Very good. So we want to talk today about the Equity Act, which you have written much about, and other measures that will inhibit religious freedom. So let's start with the Equity Act. We've talked about it here, but it's been a long time ago. What is the Equity Act? What is it proposed to do? And what is its status right now?
Well, it's actually the Equality Act, but that's just a slight difference. The Equality Act was passed in 2019 in the House of Representatives, and it basically says It alters the Civil Rights Act of 1964 to include behavior, homosexual behavior, and it links abortion in as well as behaviors that you may not discriminate against because you are in the status of a hotel, something like that. In other words, a church is equivalent to a public accommodation. It's not, but it's being classified that way. What that does, it sets up the circumstance where if you make any distinction based on the behavior, the homosexual behavior, or the practice of abortion, you're now no different than a Klan unit burning crosses in neighbors' front yards, or a squad of Nazis. Anything with social disapproval and rightful social disapproval is now identified as part of the panoply of behaviors that must be protected. And if Christians don't get on the bandwagon, you're subject to major disapproval. What is that disapproval? If you do not hire, let's say, let's go with Catholic Charities. They provide adoptions, shelters, food banks, counseling, foster care. If your adoption group will not adopt out to homosexual couples who say they're married, you're going to be sanctioned or either by losing the ability to do adoptions in Iowa or to get any credit for that. You will not be able to participate in foster care. This is a suit going on right now in Philadelphia. On one side, the so-called Catholic mayor is attempting to block the Philadelphia Archdiocese from providing foster care with referrals from the state of Pennsylvania. I mean, the Catholic Church was doing foster care before the United States government existed. And these people have the temerity to come up and say, you're not worthy, you're not eligible if you do not comply with their demands to recognize, facilitate, honor, embrace same-sex behavior. I mean, I wish I were making this up, but I'm not. And to put teeth in this, every instance of a violation, in other words, say a same-sex couple comes in, the adoption agency says no, two other same-sex couples come in, ultimately 10 same-sex couples come in 1 month and are turned down because of the requirements of the Catholic faith. Each time that happens, if these people, when they sue, there's going to be a penalty if the particular diocese employs more than, I think it's 500 people, of $500,000. 10 couples not made part of the Catholic Charities adoption will cost the diocese $500,000. 10 times 500,000, $5 million. That's a lot of bucks.
That is. Mm-hmm. That's quite the penalty.
Now, most laws involving these things have a provision in them to protect conscience rights, individual conscience rights, and the rights of religious organizations to operate according to their own beliefs. Does the law that's being proposed now, the Equality Act, does that have any provision in there, carve-out provision for people who have conscience qualms or have religious qualms about doing what they want to do?
Now, you see, you're just acting a little too smart for your own good.
Oh. Nobody has ever accused me of being too smart.
Well, on this time, you're guilty. When the Equality Act went through, and again, the problem that we're facing now is Joe Biden says he wants to pass this in the first 100 days. Remember the Catholic who has the rosary in his pocket, calls himself a practicing Catholic, all this. He wants this in the first 100 days. When the Equality Act went through the House of Representatives, it came out of that House Judiciary Committee chaired by a guy named Nadler, a congressman from New York City.
Oh, we're all familiar with Jerry Nadler, yeah.
Oh, right, okay. They specifically pulled out what you're referring to, is the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. That was a federal law, and it was imitated by state laws later. A federal law that was passed in the wake of an employment decision in one of the western states, where two American Indians who had participated in a religious ceremony of their own Native American churches, which used peyote. And, they'd been doing this for centuries, and they didn't think anything, of it. What happened, these two gentlemen were later unemployed, and or they were unemployed at that time. In any case, I think it was Idaho, required you to take a drug test as a condition for receiving unemployment compensation or other state benefits. Well, they failed. Why did they fail? Because they had peyote in their systems. Why did they have peyote in their systems? They used it as part of their religious, ceremonies. They went to court. Now, this is before, this Religious Freedom Restoration Act was passed. They went to court, and the federal court said, well, you've made a claim on the First Amendment, Religious Freedom Association. We're not going to uphold that. For whatever reason, the federal courts didn't uphold it. This provoked a collection of kind of a rogues gallery of nonprofit and religious groups from every different kind of background you could think of. Anyway, they thought that was an improper decision. Now, the court didn't say that you have to be denied this, but they said there was no exemption for you. So Congress passed, this is interesting, the guy who introduced it in the House was then Congressman Schumer, who is going to be the majority leader in a couple of days in Congress. Everybody got on this. I mean, Teddy Kennedy in the Senate, everybody was on this. And what it did, it basically carved out an exemption from the normal operation of statutes, not criminal statutes, but civil statutes, that if a individual or an institution claimed a religious exemption, that they would be granted that from the normal operation. So what did the architects of the Equality Act do? They specifically, and I read the report, the committee report on this, they specifically exempted the Religious Freedom Restoration Act from applying in the case when it comes to so-called discrimination based on, sexual orientation. It's not really orientation, it's sexual behavior, or pregnancy. Well, abortion is related to pregnancy. I mean, it undoes it, but that's, you can't prohibit abortion or providing abortion under this law without violating it. And this doesn't just apply to like a Catholic hospital. It will apply to a Catholic doctor or nurse who doesn't want to participate in it. And if you don't participate in this simple medical procedure or even a transgender surgery, you're going to lose your medical license. So the architects of this want to bankrupt institutions and want to make individuals submit by taking away their means of employment to the LGBT agenda and the abortion agenda. So that's why this is so dangerous and fraught with not just curbs on religious liberty, it is the annihilation of religious liberty.
Well, it effectively guts the Religious Freedom Act.
It's gone,
yeah.
Right. It doesn't apply in this instance, right, and that's by design.
Yeah, then it probably wouldn't apply a lot of other places, too.
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, this is so universal, it's going to be hard to get around it. For example, if you have a Catholic college and they've got insurance policies for their students, if you don't provide for treatment of transgender surgery or accommodations or, drugs to accommodate people who are doing this, or if you don't have, if you have married dormitories for conventionally married people, but not same-sex married people, you're going to lose your tax-exempt status. And again, if you don't provide this insurance, you're going to lose it, and the kids will not be eligible for grants, Pell Grants or whatever, to go to a school which basically is run by a bunch of Yahoo racist Nazis. I mean, this is, again, you've got to get in your mind that Catholics in good standing with the Church and the Lord are now persona non grata. You are equivalent to seething, hating people, and you have no rights, basically. So that's the box that Joe Biden and most of the Democrats, if not all of them, actually, I think every Democrat in the House, except about 8, which weren't present, voted for this. And
all right,
then
let's go back to the origins of the law. Where did this come from? Whose idea was it, and why was it originally being promoted?
The Human Rights Campaign is the kind of the litigation group, think tank, overarching umbrella for all the homosexual demands and policies and motivations, whatever you want to call it. It's kind of like their central operating system for demanding what they want. And they've got if you go to their Human Rights Campaign, you can download a policy statements that they have. It's very comprehensive of how they want things to change, either by statutes or by executive orders. And they're doing this in order to homosexualize the entire country. You will not be able to avoid complicity with, support of, accommodation of these behaviors. Now, this is certainly not a live and let live policy. This is a very aggressive policy where conversion among the general population to accepting, promoting, and facilitating these behaviors is now going to be a demand. And I think that you won't even be able to be silent. You know, like Thomas More thought he could be silent about the supremacy oath to the king, but his silence wasn't sufficient. I'm suspecting you're going to have to be affirmatively embracing these policies or these actions or these linkages. There'll be sexual attitude restructuring courses for any company which wants government contracts. Again, this is pervasive. This is global. This is universal. And the enemy here is the Christian churches.
This seems like an awfully large umbrella that somehow we've had these small laws in different states here and there. We've had
and we fought them,
right?
And we've been able to fight them.
And we've explored some of the consequences of this legislation on this program, including things like locker rooms and biological men joining young women's sports teams. So, will the states have any flexibility in modifying the way it applies to the citizens in their communities?
Do you want a one-word answer?
Sure.
No.
So that's the intent, so that it's our law and this is the way we want it.
No backing away, no backsliding, no evasion. You will submit to this. I mean, if you ask me why this is happening, not enough Christians are animating the body politic. I mean, that's all I can say. The other side has done the work. They're getting the prize. We haven't done it.
True. And it depends on where you're at. At the national level, it just seems so, the relationships that we build with our elected officials seems so difficult. You know, there's staff that comes between you and your legislator or congressman. I think on the state levels, though, we're doing a better job. But this, again, that's why I asked the question, how does this federal legislation supersede so much of what we do here in the states?
It preempts it. There's 222 members of the House of Representatives who are Democrat. There's 213 who are Republican. By and large, the Republicans are kind of, 98% against this, and the Democrats are 98% for it. The job for people like yourself and, Catholics and Christians around the country is to hone in on this middle ground here, to the extent there is a middle ground, and prohibit this thing from passing. And you only can do that if you make your opposition known as to what this thing will do. And I mean, if you want to shut down Catholic schools, by God, pass this Equality Act, because it will shut them down.
The private schools, sure, and, absolutely.
Right. Again, and you're not going to be. See, the states normally do the certification or the accreditation of schools as to what institutions or schools satisfy the compulsory attendance laws. If this Equality Act thing passes, where this is now, sodomy is a civil right and God knows what else is going on, you won't be able to do that because the Klan does not have tax-exempt status, period. They won't get it, and they shouldn't get it. But now, the Catholic Church, descendant from Christ and, the succession of the apostles, is now looked at as an inherently malevolent organization. I mean, you had that Haroni, woman, senator from Hawaii, basically chastising.
She verbalized exactly what, yeah.
Right. She said, do you realize that the Knights of Columbus is a bigoted organization? I say, what? How do you get that? They've got the, helping the disabled children, all kind of stuff. Oh, by the way, you have a Knights of Columbus Hall attached to your church. If you don't offer that for homosexual wedding celebrations or receptions, there goes your tax status, and there goes your property tax exemption as well.
And there goes your bank account with that hefty $500,000 fine.
Period.
Right.
All of it. So, why the bishops weren't warning people, I can't understand, but they've got 3 months now, or, maybe 120 days, to stop this from happening.
Well, this is already...
They better get in gear.
This has already passed the House before, but because we have a new House, it will have to start over again. Mm-hmm. It's been blocked in the Senate. Of course, that's a continuing body, but with the new members now, where it's going to be, the party control has shifted. It looks to me that it has the votes to pass in the Senate unless some of the moderate Democrats like Joe Manchin will stand up and oppose it. Any feeling on where he might be?
Let me tell you this. A bunch of people across the country have never heard of this thing, this law. And certainly Biden didn't go out and say, hey, by the way, we're putting locks on the doors of your churches because you didn't pay these horrendous fines because you didn't have out-of-the-closet homosexual teachers, or you don't have active homosexuals in the seminary. He didn't say any of that. So the effect of this law is going to come as a surprise to a lot of people. To blunt this, you're going to have to make known the effect of this on all church institutions, and correspondingly, those people, whether it's Catholic charities, Catholic schools, the seminaries, the sports teams, they're going to have to start lobbying Congress. Because I'll tell you, I can just tell you this. No lobbying has gone on except by the people higher up. I mean, maybe somebody from the U.S. Catholic Conference sent a letter, but the person in the pew in St. Michael's Parish or St. John the Baptist Parish, they weren't activated on this thing. If the congressmen all of a sudden start hearing from the grassroots, this is going to take a different course, but it has to happen in the next 100 or 120 days.
Okay. Bob, I hope we can hold you over during the break here because we do have to take a break. And then I want to go over some specific aspects of that bill. You're listening to Faith on Trial on Iowa Catholic Radio, and Gina and I will be back with Robert Marshall in just a few minutes.
Is it time for a new roof? Then it could be time for you to get to know Bell Construction. Bell Construction is a roofing company entering its 30th year of business. They specialize in residential re-roofs, like commercial jobs, and have the experience to meet all of your roofing needs with personal service. With Bell Construction, the owner will come to your home or place of business in person to inspect and ensure the quality of work that you deserve. They pride themselves in working with you on a personal basis and making sure you are satisfied. Bell Construction, 515-963-4494.
What is the best gift ever? Giving a Catholic education is at the top of my list. Your contribution to CTO helps families send their children to our Catholic schools who otherwise could not afford it. In giving to CTO, you receive the best tax credits ever. Pledge or donate online at ctoiowa.org. The bottom line, it's for the kids and their future.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and Dowling Catholic Sports is provided in part by Ashworth Vision Clinic. With 2 licensed optometrists, Barbara Sheets, a Dowling graduate, and Dr. Craig Harper, the Ashworth Vision Clinic team provides complete eye exams, contact lenses, glasses, glaucoma testing, and pre- and post-operative care. Ashworth Vision Clinic is located at 60th and Ashworth in West Des Moines. 515-440-4610 or online, ashworthvision.com.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and Catholic Women Now provided in part by Permar Security, providing security solutions for homes and businesses since 1953. Permar Security is a Catholic-owned family business supplying security systems, access control systems, video surveillance, fire alarm systems, and video doorbells. All alarm systems are monitored out of their monitoring center located in the state of Iowa. Permar Security, 515-244-5660, permarsecurity.com.
Thank you, Dental Associates, for underwriting Dowling Catholic Sports 365. With over 40 years' experience, Dental Associates is a group dental practice with the mission of promoting optimum health and well-being to all patients, providing preventative, restorative, and cosmetic dentistry for the entire family. Message underwritten by Dr. Kenton Gleichman, Dr. Steve Karbaka, Dr. Christine Mulcahy, and Dr. Ben Nagel. Dental Associates, addressing your smile, needs, and dreams. Online at DesMoines-DentalAssociates.com.
Here is your forecast on Iowa Catholic Radio. A winter storm system is going to impact the region today with occasional rain mixed with snow at times. Snow will become more dominant as we go into late this afternoon and this evening. Temperatures will likely be in the mid to upper 30s with strong northwest winds. Snow off and on through tonight with significant accumulation. Our low 29, snow early Friday with a high temperature in the mid-30s. This weather brought to you by Divine Treasures, a Catholic book and gift store serving the Des Moines community for over 25 years. I'm meteorologist Ann Holiday on Iowa Catholic Radio.
And you're listening to Faith on Trial on Iowa Catholic Radio. And Gina and I are back with Robert Marshall. And we've been talking about the Equality Act, and we're going to get into other measures that may inhibit religious freedom. Thank you for staying with us, Bob. Gina had an interesting question she wanted to ask you. We were talking about in the break, so go ahead, Gina.
Well, before we go on to the next step of this, I can't help but compare this legislation with the way the Obamacare, the national health care bill went through the Congress. No one really knew what was in it. It sounded like a good idea, get everyone health care, and they passed it. And then, little by little, pieces and parts of it became controversial and ended up in the Supreme Court. How do you feel the Equality Act will be protected or diminished in this Supreme Court?
Let me tell you what's going on. The Equality Act combines all the worst aspects of the Equal Rights Amendment and these other, demands for identity treatment in one bill without having to go through the process of passing a constitutional amendment. Because, again, women's sports, girls' sports, gone. You won't even be able, to do this. You're going to have pronoun police in schools. How much disruption is that going to cause? Creative professionals who understand, not even from religion, but just from biology, that men and women are different, are going to be looked at as not eligible to provide services to any government-funded program. So this is how far it's going to go, and it's going to go further unless people say, I'm not tolerating this, and we have got to oppose this. But what they're doing here, the term equality has such a kind of a benign-sounding aspect about it. This is not equality. This is a one-way street to identities that people don't want to involve with. I mean, I get even uncomfortable describing the behavior that is involved here. Well, I mean, other than, go on. I'm sorry.
So, no, it's a pendulum switch. I mean, and maybe that's the wrong way to describe it, but to me, it serves as a sign of true hostility towards people of faith and a bigotry towards people who want to practice their faith, which is contrary to exactly what this country was organized for.
Bob, we just mentioned something about women in schools and that. The girls' sports and women's sports, my understanding is if the Equality Act passes and is signed into law, that separate athletic teams for men and women will kind of be a thing of the past.
Well, right, because that's an institutionalization of sexism and bigotry.
And it would seem to me that there probably are a lot of women's rights organizations that are looking at the effect that will have on scholarship opportunities and things like that for women, and maybe raising their voice about this, but apparently they're not even being heard.
They better speak up in the next 4 months, or this is going to go through. I mean, my guess is there'll be a version of this in the House and a version in the Senate, and then there'll be a conference report, which means they iron out differences that may take another 35 or 45 days. So you've got maybe 5 months, but I would urge people to get busy in the next 120 days to blunt this. Because if you don't, this is such a radical restructure, not just of the law, but of every possible configuration of social relationship. I mean, look, Nancy Pelosi changed the rules so you can't use gendered terms in the House of Representatives in floor debate. I mean, what kind of lunacy is that? You can't use father, mother, sister. I mean,
but what Nancy did yesterday, she spoke as a mother, as a wife, as a daughter. Nobody called her out on it.
Because there's speech and there's speech. I mean, there's hypocrisy and there's hypocrisy.
There you go.
But you're right. This is a straitjacket. I mean, look, at bottom, these individuals are at war with the Creator. Remember in the Old Testament, He made them male and female. These people are seriously at war with the design and nature that God the Father has put there. It's not bad, but it's imputed to be bad. For whatever personal difficulties they have, they're projecting the source of it on other people. I mean, who was it? This Tim Gill, who got to be a multimillionaire from a software program he designed, which was a desktop publishing thing. And he's the one who bankrolled the same-sex marriage decision, the litigation, all the lawyers and such. He says we have to punish our enemies. Who are the enemies? The Christians. Why? Because the Christians propose a standard of behavior that is external to the individual desires of the people who want to pursue same-sex behavior uninhibited. Now, these folks need prayer. They don't need to be put in power to oppress the rest of us. So you're going to have to delicately, prudently, and motivated by the love of Christ, deal with this. But if you lay down and roll over, you will be persecuted. No ifs, ands, or buts or exceptions about it. Sorry to be this way, but to be so global in its application, there's no other alternative you can reach, but that the Christians are going to be they won't even be second-class citizens. They won't be citizens at all.
Now, I see here in some of the materials that you wrote that the Equality Act would require tax funding of all abortions without restriction. Correct. Is that correct?
Correct. The Hyde Amendment, which again I helped devise along with a retired FBI agent back in 1976, has prohibited tax money from going to abortion. And it's been that way for years. Biden wants to change that because the Equality Act uses language that can be construed to create a right to demand abortion from health care providers. It therefore negates the authority of the government to prohibit taxpayer-funded abortions. It negates the ability of the doctor and nurse to say no. Normally, rules of construction have been applied to these federal programs that prevent requiring the funding of abortion or nullifying of conscience laws. There is no such rule of construction in the Equality Act. In other words, they're taking out every protection that a Christian would want for themselves, their hospital, or their church, and it's gone because the Equality Act defines sex including pregnancy, childbirth, or related medical conditions. Abortion is clearly a related medical condition. And here, the quote is, a related medical condition shall not receive less favorable treatment than other physical conditions. States administering Medicaid would be considered an establishment that provides health care. Funding restrictions, including the Hyde Amendment, are in jeopardy.
Okay,
End of discussion.
Now, let's talk about some of the transsexual people that are claiming to be one thing and not another. It seems to me that this act provides a lot of protection for them, and it would outlaw sex-specific bathroom and shower facilities in schools, and it would, I know there's been a case, I think it's still percolating around in the courts, about a transgendered person who claims to be a woman who wanted to stay in a battered women's shelter, which would expose, or at least theoretically expose, some of the battered women to a male in their midst. What does the Equality Act say about that?
It says you're going to have to accept this person who identifies or claims to be a sex different than, that of their birth. I mean, actually, sex goes back to conception. And this notion that sex is assigned is verbal buffoonery. You don't assign sex, you recognize it. But you have to understand what's going on with the way that the words are manipulated. And the case you're talking about, I think, originated in Alaska. And I
believe you're right, yes.
It's still, like you say, percolating. But if this Equality Act passes, all these things are going to be consolidated and brought under that. So, again, the battered women, you don't need the actuality of a rape. All they have to worry about is the threat of a rape because they've been, beaten up so much. Why would you subject women to this? Well, you've got some overarching ideological goal you have here in forcing everybody to conform to it. And this is not the America that I grew up in.
Now, how would this deal with banking laws? For example, if a Catholic church or a Knights of Columbus group wanted to take out a loan from a federally chartered institution, could that be prohibited under this act?
Of course it would. It even mentions that. It doesn't say it directly, but it means it. In other words, let's say the Kliegel of the Ku Klux Klan wants to, build a monument to real racism and bigotry and hatred and discrimination against people because of their religion or their race. You couldn't go into any federally chartered bank and get a loan. But remember, the Catholic Church, the Knights of Columbus, you want to build a rectory, you want to build a church, you're in the category with the Klan, with the Kliegels, and you're not going to get a loan. So, again, when I say this is universal, there's no aspect of society that is exempted from this. So you're going to have to, put the money together on your own to do this. And my next question is, will you get construction insurance because you're a bigoted group? I don't know that you would be able to get it. You're going to have to self-fund everything. But if you're busy paying off all these lawsuits against you, how can you possibly amass the money to build a dormitory, to build a rectory, to build a new church? The answer is you're not, because the church is slated for non-existence. You better get this through your heads. I mean, not yours, but the people in the pew need to understand the far-reaching malevolence of this. Now, whether these people, I have no idea, I can't project motives, but the effect of what they want to do clearly is the destruction of all Christian institutions and the shuttering of all Christians into social closets from which you're not going to exit to have any influence in the public square at all. None.
Last week we had on the program a discussion of the Virginia Values?
Virginia Values Act.
That's
Yes.
Yeah. Do you have any insight on how that came about and where it may be headed?
And how similar the two are. Yes, they sound very similar.
It came about, the Virginia Values Act is a kind of a miniature state version of the Equality Act. And again, I was in the Assembly for 26 years. I know some of the people who pushed this thing. Marcus Simon, the guy who pushed this, said, look, if you don't want to be fined, don't discriminate. Now, what he means is throw away your standards, and you're going to have to accept the legitimacy of an out of the closet drag queen teaching in your school, or somebody who says they're married to the same person, or a person of the same sex, as an example of the Catholic faith. You can't do that. So the choice they want to put before us is apostasy or bankruptcy. Neither is relevant. And why did it come about? Because the Democrats have taken over. I mean, the Republicans were not all virtuous. And look, I used to have to fight my Republican colleagues to take a stand on anything. I mean, I was nicknamed the gentleman from Vatican City, and I earned the annoyance of a lot of people because I made them go on record. I didn't let them go. I mean, I even got Democrats to agree with me to put everybody on record, even on abortion votes. So the Republicans did not like that. But, I was there for 26 years. I finally lost to some guy who, says he's a woman, raised more than $1 million from all around the country for a job that pays $17,400 a year. And again, they just did the work better than we did. They had much more money to do the work better than we did. But when I ran, I couldn't get my people to believe that a guy who wears a dress would win. I said, yes, he can.
Yeah. Just a little bit of an aside here before we have to leave you. The story about the Hyde Amendment, your involvement in getting the Hyde Amendment. You were, I think, a congressional employee or aide at the time?
Well, no, this is what it was. John Mackey, who was the government representative for an organization called the Ad Hoc Committee in Defense of Life, which was founded by the Buckley family. Bill Buckley, John Buckley, his brother, who was a U.S. Senator on the conservative line from New York. John called me up one day, and I had been going to meetings in Washington, D.C. from 1973 through 76, all these right-to-life people. And again, I had worked for a pro-life Democrat before that. It wasn't a live issue in the early 70s, but it became an issue in January. John did a FOIA, Freedom of Information request, to the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare, which later became the Department of Health and Human Services, and found out that about 180,000 kids were killed using tax money for abortion. I thought this was ludicrous. John and I had been aggressively pushing for some things to happen, action-wise, whether we would, even if we would lose, I wanted something to happen. And I had actually initiated that in June of 1973 when I was working at the Office of Economic Opportunity. I ran across material, showed that the legal service lawyers funded the research for the Roe and Doe decisions. I thought this was really bad. So this information was given to a congressman. It resulted in an amendment to the bill, but that's the only vote we had on the floor from 1973 to 1976. John called me up and says, about time to do something. I said, I agree with you. I took his Freedom of Information Act request, a copy of it, went down to Capitol Hill, pulled a congressman off the floor whom I knew from a group called Young Americans for Freedom. I explained to him, this is what he didn't know, and this guy was as pro-life as you or I are. He didn't know that tax money was used for abortion. I had suspected it, but John was able to prove it with the FOIA. I gave this to him, and I said, look, here's some language we need to cut off the abortion funding. Now, the reason you could do this was because the appropriations bills did not have to go through the Rules Committee to get a rule to govern the offering of amendments. Every other authorization bill is constricted by prohibiting members from offering certain amendments or only allowing certain amendments. Not so with the appropriations
Right, and just
bill.
So people know, what happens in the House of Representatives when a bill comes out of committee, it goes to this Rules Committee, then that establishes a rule that governs how the bill is to be treated from there on out.
Right. So again, all the authorization bills have a rule governing the amendments. There weren't rules, for the appropriations bills because it's just wide open. I said, we can get a floor vote if you have an amendment stating none of the funds authorized shall be used to pay for abortion, period. It was basically Medicaid. He said, you know what? There's a freshman congressman here, I didn't know who it was, who's interested in this, and I think he might be able to do something. So I gave him the suggested language. I gave him the FOIA. And 6 weeks later, I read in the papers that a congressman from Illinois offered an amendment to the HEW appropriations bill, and it passed. I told the congressman initially when I gave it to him, I said, I don't care if it passes or not. I do care, but my goal was to get a record vote because everybody was hiding from this. So not only did we get a record vote, but we won. That became the kind of the standard for doing this. And then later, as a congressional aide, I drafted amendments prohibiting abortion funding in the U.S. Civil Service, the Indian Health Service, the Defense Department, Bureau of Prisons, all kind of stuff. So, and that was through Congressman Bob Dornan.
And that congressman that you gave the idea for the amendment to was Henry Hyde.
Well, I actually gave it to Bob Bauman, who gave it to Henry Hyde. I didn't know Henry Hyde. I didn't know Henry Hyde at the time, but that's how it happened.
Well, that's good. We're going to have to leave it right here. We're running out of time, but Bob, I want to thank you for joining us today. It was an interesting discussion, and I think we ought to keep in mind this Equality Act and what it may do so that we can contact our congressmen and representatives. Yes. Right. Thank you very much,
Absolutely.
Robert. We'll have you back sometime to talk more about
Thank you
this.
for having me.
Certainly.
Okay.
Appreciate it. God bless you. This is Faith
Bye-bye.
on Trial on Iowa Catholic Radio, and Gina and I will be right back.
What is the best gift ever? Giving a Catholic education is at the top of my list. Your contribution to CTO helps families send their children to our Catholic schools who otherwise could not afford it. In giving to CTO, you receive the best tax credits ever. Pledge or donate online at ctoiowa.org. The bottom line, it's for the kids and their future.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and Dowling Catholic Sports is provided in part by Ashworth Vision Clinic. With 2 licensed optometrists, Barbara Sheets, a Dowling graduate, and Dr. Craig Harper, the Ashworth Vision Clinic team provides complete eye exams, contact lenses, glasses, glaucoma testing, and pre- and post-operative care. Ashworth Vision Clinic is located at 60th and Ashworth in West Des Moines. 515-440-4610 or online, ashworthvision.com.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and Catholic Women Now provided in part by Permar Security, providing security solutions for homes and businesses since 1953. Permar Security is a Catholic-owned family business supplying security systems, access control systems, video surveillance, fire alarm systems, and video doorbells. All alarm systems are monitored out of their monitoring center located in the state of Iowa. Permar Security, 515-244-5660, permarsecurity.com.
Thank you, Dental Associates, for underwriting Dowling Catholic Sports 365. With over 40 years' experience, Dental Associates is a group dental practice with the mission of promoting optimum health and well-being to all patients, providing preventative, restorative, and cosmetic dentistry for the entire family. Message underwritten by Dr. Kenton Gleichman, Dr. Steve Karbaka, Dr. Christine Mulcahy, and Dr. Ben Nagel. Dental Associates, addressing your smile, needs, and dreams. Online at DesMoines-DentalAssociates.com.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and Faith on Trial provided by Paul Martin and Paul Mitchell, owners of Imogene Ingredients. Imogene Ingredients supply specialized feed ingredients for livestock and pet diets to improve maternal and young animal health in both conventional and organic production. Information about Pharmatan and other products at ImogeneIngredients.com. Paul and Paul are members of St. Augustine's Knights of Columbus and encourage their brother knights to keep standing for their faith.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and Storm Alert Weather is provided by Divine Treasures. Divine Treasures is a Catholic book and gift store serving the Des Moines community for over 25 years. Their mission is to help Catholics know, love, and keep their faith in our Lord Jesus Christ and His Church. Divine Treasures is where you can find great Catholic books, beautiful Bibles, rosaries, jewelry, statues, and religious gifts for those memorable events in your life. Divine Treasures, 5701 Hickman Road, Des Moines, 515-255-5230. Thank you to Divine Treasures for their support of Iowa Catholic Radio.
And you're listening to Faith on Trial on Iowa Catholic Radio. Gene, an interesting program this morning with Robert Marshall.
Wow, he is full of history and information.
He's been there.
Yes,
yeah.
I love the story about the Hyde Amendment. The whole topic of conversation today was the Equality Act, that looks like it will be debated in the House and Senate again in this assembly, maybe in the next 100 days. But it just reminds me how important it is for us to understand that words matter. We may all agree that equality is important, and it's something we should strive for. But using that word to describe this piece of legislation, it seems anything but equal.
Yeah, and we need to worry about it because I think the numbers are there for it to possibly pass both the House and the Senate, and we know the president-to-be, the president-elect, has announced that he would sign it, whatever form it comes in. So there's a big danger there.
Well, and I know not all of our listeners are from Iowa, but all of our listeners have a U.S. representative and two U.S. senators that represent them in Congress. And I would encourage everyone listening today to at least reach out somehow and see if you can have a conversation with at a town hall about the Equality Act with your representative.
Right, and speak to your pastors and your bishops about it, too, because they have to be on board.
Know about it.
Right, because sometimes they aren't. So let's end now with our prayer to St. Michael, and, of course, we need his protection now.
Oh, he'll do great things for us.
More than ever. St. Michael, the Archangel, defend us in battle, be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray, and do thou, Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, thrust into hell Satan and all the evil spirits who prowl about the world, seeking the ruin of souls. Amen. Well, for Gina and myself, thank you for listening. Join us next week for another edition of Faith on Trial on Iowa Catholic Radio. Until then, have a blessed and peaceful week.
Our freedom of conscience and religion is being challenged by laws and regulations imposed by secular society. Faith on Trial with Defender of the Faith, Deacon Mike Mano. Faith on Trial, Thursdays at 10 a.m. on Iowa Catholic Radio, iowacatholicradio.com, and the Iowa Catholic Radio app.
Support for Faith on Trial and Iowa Catholic Radio provided in part by Imogene Ingredients.